very warm welcome to our program from the National Assembly. We're coming to you live from the network service of the NTA. My name is Dennis Adigunloye. Well, legislative business on the floor of the Senate is back in full swing following recess, and on the order paper for today we are expecting second reading considerations for about 9 bills, including a bill for an act to repeal the National Commission for Refugees Act, a bill for an act to regulate the manufacture, importation, distribution and quality control of fertilizer, and another bill for an act to establish the Nigeria Police Development Fund. Now, to talk more on some of these bills, I have with me the leader of the Senate, distinguished Senator Ahmed Lawan, to talk more on these issues for us. Distinguished Senator, thanks for your audience. We know you're a very busy man, but thanks for giving us this time.
Thank you very much.
First and foremost, we wish to welcome you back from your long recess. And what can you say to us on what we're expecting today on the floor of the Senate?
Well, you can see the order paper is heavily loaded. Of course, we intend to do a lot within the short period that we have. We have 9 bills for second reading in today's order paper. And we intend to have very robust and vibrant debates on each of them, if time permits. But I also want to say that the closed session of yesterday and the subsequent activities of the Senate was largely on the security of Nigeria, the unity of Nigeria, the peaceful coexistence which we had in our closed session, and then, of course, in the plenary yesterday, we had 2 motions that were specifically targeted at the economy of Nigeria, the implementation of the budget 2017, which of course we believe is very fundamental and significant in ensuring that the economy moves the way we want it to. Today, we are looking at the police fund bill, which is an additional effort to make sure that we beef up the security apparatus in the country. The Police Development Fund will give the police force in Nigeria a lot more resources to ensure that we enable them for optimal performance, and I believe that this is something that we are all looking forward to, and Nigerians will be pleased to have a police force that is efficient, that is professional and effective in ensuring our security. We also have this bill that seeks to look into the manufacturing distribution of fertilizer across the country. You know, this again is an effort, an attempt by the legislature, the Senate particularly, to give the quest, the necessity that we have today of diversifying our economy, and agriculture is central, as Mr. President, President Muhammad Buhari has always said, that we can change this economy from the mono that we have today, an oil-based economy, to something that we can have agriculture, we can have solid minerals and improve manufacturing and so on and so forth. But in agriculture, you need to have inputs that are of high quality, inputs that are available, inputs that are affordable for our farmers. So this particular bill is an attempt by the Senate to ensure that we provide that kind of environment, that kind of climate where whatever fertilizer we have are the kind of fertilizer that we require in Nigeria, not the kind of thing that we had in the past. I happen to be chairman House Committee on Agriculture in the past, in 2003, as a member of the House of Reps, and I had very bad experience with importation of fertilizers. Some of the imported fertilizers, for example, were so damn below the quality that we should have. In fact, there were cases of rebagging, and therefore people were shortchanged. Farmers could not get those kind of fertilizers available to them even at that time. Now we want to see a distribution system that ensure that farmers get their fertilizers in good time, but also they get fertilizers at the right price that they can afford. So it's really chalked up for us, but we are determined to ensure that we give maximum time to ensure that we pass those bills today.
So, distinguished Senator, obviously this bill, speedy passage of this bill is certainly going to go a long way to improving the lot of the agricultural sector in this country. So, distinguished Senator, Ahmed Lawan, the leader of the Senate. We're thankful for your time.
Thank you.
We know you're a very busy man. We'll let you get back to the floor of the Senate.
Too.
For sure.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, that was the leader of the Senate, distinguished Senator Ahmed Lawan. Any moment from now, we shall cross to the chambers for today's plenary. Please stay tuned.
To ensure that the effects, the citizens there will be attended to, and then the effect will be reduced. We also hope that our committee on NEMA, especially the committee chairman, will help to follow up on this to ensure that there is immediate attention paid to this community and those around there. So it's well noted. So we believe that action will be taken soonest. Thank you. Senator Baribe.
Thank you, Mr. President, my distinguished colleagues. Coming under Order 15, privileges. Any senator may rise at any time to speak upon a matter of privilege suddenly arising.
Order.
And he shall be prepared to move without notice a motion declaring that a contempt or breach of privilege has been committed, or referring the matter to the Committee on Ethics and Privileges. But if the matter is raised in a committee of the whole Senate, the chairman shall leave the chair to report progress. Mr. President, my distinguished colleagues,
Order, please.
this matter concerns each and every senator in this floor. This matter has to do with our meeting of yesterday, which was a closed-door meeting, which was not an open meeting. This morning, Mr. President, I was surprised to find that on the front page of the Daily Trust newspaper, there was a headline that says, IPOB senators query Abaribe over Kanu's bail. Mr. President, we have always said on this floor that anytime we have a closed-door session, that it is only what the presiding officer says after the closed-door session that is the sum total of our discussion. And I remember that yesterday, 3 points were made as a result of our discussion, which was Nigeria's unity, and also the effort by this Senate to make sure that we help in bringing peace to this country. A headline that purports to say that this was what happened in our closed-door session, which of course did not happen, does not in any way advance the cause of peace in this country. My constituents have been worried. They have called me and they have been asking me, and I've told them that it is not true and that I will bring it up on the floor and ask this entire Senate to please help us to ask Daily Trust to be able to produce whoever gave them this erroneous and misleading information. The Senate does not query anybody or any of its members. That is the first place where they failed in casting this headline. Of course, the rest of what happened, each and every senator here knows what we discussed and how we discussed and what we came out as the end of our deliberation. So I wish to be given the opportunity to lay this newspaper and ask that this Senate please look into this attempt at driving a wedge between the Southeast senators and the Northern senators, because it was said here that the Northern senators made a demand for which the Southeast senators reluctantly agreed. So we need to be able to be very careful with the type of headlines that come out in this country. It means that some people are bent on making sure that no peace comes out in there, but I know that God will not allow them to go ahead with their nefarious entities.
All right, but let the paper, please. Well, distinguished colleagues, this again does not call for any debate. We just simply refer to our committee on ethics. But let me just say that we expect our papers, our press, to show highest level of responsibility in the way they do their work. And then publishing rumors will not help us in any way. So I just want to appeal to our pressmen and women to find it in their hearts, ensure that whatever they do will be within the highest degree of responsibility. And I am sure that all of us know that no such thing happened during our closed door session. And to our colleagues, I believe that closed door session should be closed door session. Whatever happens there should end there. And whatever is reported as the outcome of that closed door session should be the official position of the Senate, unless the spokesperson of the Senate indeed gives further clarification. Outside that, any other thing should be regarded as rumor. So I just want to appeal that we maintain some level of responsibility in reporting what transpires in both the closed door session and indeed in all our sessions, so that the Nigerians will also know that both the press and the parliament are working together in the best interest of our country. So it's well noted, very well. So I'm referring to the committee of ethics of our committee on ethics to investigate what happened. State leader. Yes, Senator Gamade.
Thank you, Mr. President. My name is Barnabas Gamade. I rise this morning on two orders, Order 42 and Order 52. And if I have your permission, may I read this?
Senator Jubril.
Mr. President, my name is Barrow Jibrin. I represent Kaduna North. I come under Order 5610. With your permission, I read. During a sitting, all senators should be silent or shall confer only in undertone. Mr. President, we are in breach of this order. You can hear noise everywhere. I therefore urge Mr. President.
Point of order upheld. Please, can we return to our various seats? Can we leave our women? Please allow the female senators to settle down. Senator Fashe, can you allow her to settle down, to go to her seat? Allow the female senator to go to her seat, please.
Senator Adan, please go to your seat.
So I just want to say that the female senators are well protected. State leader. Oh, sorry, Senator Gamade.
Thank you, Mr. President. I once more rise on Order 42 and Order 52. And by the permission of Mr. President, may I read this? Order 42, matter of urgent public importance. The matter for discussion shall, if possible, be referred to the President of the Senate before commencement of the day's sitting, and the President of the Senate shall refuse to allow the claim unless he is satisfied that the matter is of definite and urgent. Order 52 is dispensed with notice. Notice shall not be dispensed with in the case of a motion or in respect of any other proceeding for which notice is required, except with the consent of the President of the Senate and the general assent of the senators present. Mr. President, the If I have your permission, I'd like to proceed.
You can go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. President. I know that the Senate has been fully hit by the number of motions regarding flooding all over the country due to climate change, but I come via these two orders this morning about the situation of flooding in Benue in order to get at least one or two specific decisions taken by the Senate in order to alleviate the pains that these people are going through. So I make a motion that the flood has ravaged 21 out of...
Sorry, distinguished. Well, let's get the consent of our colleagues so that I can proceed. Their colleagues is coming under 42 and 52. Now, for him to proceed today, then it means I will get the approval. Is it the wish of the Senate that will allow him to proceed with the motion today? Those supposed to say aye. Those against say nay. Ayes have it. You can now proceed.
Thank you, sir. Senate notes that the flood has ravaged 21 out of 23 local government areas of Benue State, and further notes that the torrential rainfall in Benue State on Sunday, 27th August 2017, has caused the displacement of over 100,000 persons, including mainly women and children. Senate is concerned that the rise in water levels as a result of flood have submerged houses, thereby rendering them inhabitable, and properties worth billions of naira completely destroyed. Concerned further that thousands of houses have collapsed as a result of the heavy downpour, especially in rural areas across the 21 local government areas. Roads washed away and many bridges cut off. Aware that Benue State government, which is renowned as food basket of Nigeria, has been destabilized and economic activities grounded to a halt, with fears expressed of the whole state being eventually submerged. Aware also that there has also been news of flooding and displacement of people and properties in states like Niger, Kogi, Kwara, and several other states also requiring attention. Alarmed at the high level of water in dams and lakes in the Cameroon, excess water will soon be released, which will lead to more flooding of the states along the River Benue and Niger and their tributaries. Aware that dignitaries have visited the flood victims in Benue State, led by Mr. President, who was ably represented by the Vice President, the governors of Imo and Kebbi States, corporations such as Dangote Group, MTN Foundation, and banks, and well-meaning individuals, too numerous to mention, bringing donations, but the problem still remains enormous. Senate therefore accordingly resolves to 1. Send a delegation to visit the flood victims. 2. Urge NEMA to scale up its operations in all the flood-affected areas by providing relief materials to victims of the flood disaster. And lastly, urge the federal government to assist Benue State with grants for rebuilding and resettlement of communities. I so move.
Okay, Senator Shitu, can you second the motion?
Thank you very much, Mr. President. Distinguished colleagues, I rise to second the motion ably moved by my colleague, Senator Barnabas Gamadi. I so second.
All right, thank you. Very distinguished colleagues, you can see this is a very straightforward motion. This happened when we were on holidays. Let me use the opportunity on behalf of the Senate to express our concern to the good people of Benue State and our sympathy to the victims or those who suffered during the flood. And I'm happy that the Vice President found time to go there and visit and met with the people. So on behalf of the Senate, please accept our sympathy over what happened, and this opportunity for us to call on the government of all states to ensure that they make adequate preparations for times such as that. And I think it would be helpful if we all provide in our various states emergency shelters so that when some of these things happen, I think the best cushion is for such people to find a place to lay their heads, which did not happen in Benue State. So it is important that we realize that this can happen in any state and begin on time to make adequate arrangement for it. And the provision of emergency shelters should be a priority for all states in Nigeria, so that when our citizens run into this type of problem, they'll have a place to lay their heads, and those who want to help will see a place to also meet with them and be able to send in their support. So once more, we want to express our gratitude to the federal government for their intervention, and also the government of Benue State and all citizens of Benue State who helped in one way or the other to cushion the effects. And of course, we are aware that our friends in the international community also helped, our development partners. So our gratitude goes to all of them for that solidarity. So efforts should be made, in the long run to ensure that this does not happen again, including draining of areas that needs to be drained, and making sure that all the drainages are also cleared of all debris at all time, so that this will not help to cause further flooding in any part of Nigeria. So we want to thank you for bringing this up. Senior Leader, let us go to the prayers. Prayer 1, urge NEMA to scale up its operation in all the flood-affected areas by providing relief materials to victims of the flood disaster. Those in support of this prayer say aye. Those against say nay. The ayes have it. Prayer 2, all the federal government that assists Benue State with grants for rebuilding and resettling of communities. Those in support of this prayer say aye. Those against say nay. The ayes have it. Thank you. Senior Leader.
Mr. President and my distinguished colleagues, the first order of the day is the second reading of the National Commission for Internally...
Sorry, before I get to that. I think one of the prayers is that we send a delegation. So that the Senate do send a delegation to visit the flood victims. Those of this prayer say aye. Those against say nay. The ayes have it. So we will constitute a team before the close of the day that will go and visit the victims. Senior Leader.
Thank you very much.
No, it's okay.
Mr. President and my distinguished colleagues, the first order of the day is the second reading of the National Commission for Internally Displaced Persons, Refugees, and Migrant Bill 2017. Distinguished senators will recall that the bill was read the first time in this chamber on Tuesday, the 22nd day of November 2016. Mr. President, you may wish to invite distinguished Senator Ubali Shitu to move the motion for the bill to be read the second time.
Senator Shitu, you can proceed to lead the debate, please.
Thank you very much, Mr. President, distinguished colleagues. I rise to present the lead debate on National Commission for Internally Displaced Persons, Refugees and Immigrants Bill 2017. Mr. President, distinguished colleagues, permit me to lead a debate on a bill for an act to repeal National Commission for Refugees Act, Cap N21, Laws of Operation in Nigeria 2004, and enact the National Commission for Internally Displaced Persons, Refugees and Immigrants to provide a framework for management, rehabilitation, return, reintegration, and the resettlement of victims of displacement, refuge, and migration. Let me use this opportunity to highlight the background of the bill, which I believe will not only provide a justification for this laudable legislative initiative, but will also motivate the National Assembly to accelerate the legislative process in passing the bill into law. Background of bill. As at 2014, Nigeria has had 3.3 million persons displaced by conflict, the highest number in Africa. This information is contained in a report of Global Overview 2014. The report released by the Internally Displaced Monitoring Center, IDMC, and the Norwegian Refugee Council, NRC, violence, abuse, and forced evictions all add to the conflict mix in many of these situations. While in places such as Nigeria, people have observed how challenging life becomes for those already displaced by conflict when they are struck down again by floods and storms. According to the report, there are 3.3 million IDPs in Nigeria, and 470,500 individuals were displaced in 2013. On a global scale, Nigeria is ranked next to Syria with 6.5 million IDPs, and Colombia with 5.7 IDPs. The report explains the unprecedented rise in IDPs in Nigeria by the increase in the activities of Boko Haram attacks, heavy-handed counter-insurgency operations, and ongoing intercommunal violence. After the Boko Haram insurgents were pushed out of major towns in Northeast, and following the declaration of state of emergency in Borno, Yobe, and Adamawa in May 2013, they focused their attacks with increased brutality on towns and villages close to the Niger border, Nigeria's border with Cameroon, Chad, and Niger Republic. In spite of the fatal consequences on human lives, property, and unimagined human displacement, there is no law that acquires direct jurisdiction to manage the incidence of IDP in Nigeria. This gap brings institutions such as NEMA, National Commission for Refugees, with resembling mandate in an open referral, claiming sovereignty over one another to manage the IDPs in Nigeria. The gap also creates a difficulty in coordination and facilitation of effective collaboration, network, and synergy among stakeholders that channel resources and service for management of IDPs in the country. The National Commission for Refugees seems to have closer mandate to manage the IDPs than the other related institutions, since refugees have a lot in similarities with IDPs. This reality informs the need to amend the legal framework that established the National Commission for Refugees through repeal and the enactment to establish the Commission with new name and broad mandate to accommodate the IDPs within the operational scope. Objectives of the bill. The bill seeks to, 1, repeal the existing legal framework that establishes the National Commission for Refugees and enact a new one with new name and broad mandate to accommodate IDPs in Nigeria. 2, utilize the National Commission for Refugees as central coordinating agency in managing, facilitating, and administering matters related to the IDPs. 3, facilitate institutional stakeholder collaboration and networks for effective management of IDPs, refugees, and migrants in Nigeria. 4, facilitate utilization of national IDP and migration policy. 5, create a central platform for interaction and dialogue on matters related to IDPs, refugees, and migrants in Nigeria. 6, reduce government expenditure through creation of additional institutions with similar mandate on IDPs or migrants. 7, facilitate easy accountability of statutory donor and any other fund that is given or credited to the Commission for Management of Refugees, IDPs, and Migrants in Nigeria. Content of the bill. The bill has 33 clauses divided into 6 parts. Part 1 deals with establishment of a National Commission for Internally Displaced Persons, Refugees, and Migrants, and contains 6 clauses. Clause 1 deals with the establishment of the Commission. Clause 2 deals with the establishment and appointment of members of Council. Clause 3 deals with tenure and designation. cessation and removal from membership of the board. Clause 4 deals with function and powers of the board. Clause 5 deals with functions of the commission. Clause 6 deals with powers of the commission. Part 2 deals with appointment of Director General and other staff of the commission with a single clause. Part 3 deals with establishment of committees of the commission and the contains 6 clauses. Clause 1 deals with establishment of internally displaced management committee. Clause 2 deals with protection, registration, and documentation and assistance to internally displaced persons. Clause 3 deals with establishment of eligibility committee for refugees. Clause 4 deals with refugee appeal panel. Clause 5 deals with migration management committee. And Clause 6 deals with management and protection of rights of migrants. Part 4 dealt with management of refugees with 11 clauses. Clause 1 deals with applying for refugee status in Nigeria. Clause 2 deals with prohibition of expulsion or return of refugees from Nigeria. Clause 3 dealt with residents in Nigeria pending recognition or refusal of refugee. Clause 4 deals with cessation or stay of proceedings in respect of illegal entry. Clause 5 deals with residents in Nigeria of persons granted refugee status. Clause 6 deals with withdrawal of refugee status. Clause 7 deals with right of appeal to the Secretary of the Government of the Federation. Clause 8 deals with treatment of families of members of refugees. Clause 9 deals with rights and duties of refugees. Clause 10 dealt with detention and expulsion of refugees. Clause 11 dealt with special assistance to refugees and their family members. Part 5 dealt with financial provision and has 3 clauses. Clause 1 dealt with funds of the Commission. Clause 2 dealt with establishment of humanitarian trust fund. And Clause 3 dealt with compensation. Part 4 dealt with miscellaneous and has 6 clauses. Clause 1 dealt with powers to make regulation. Clause 2 dealt with annual report. Clause 3 dealt with repeal. Clause 4 dealt with saving. Clause 5 dealt with interpretation. And Clause 6 dealt with citation. Cost implications on the government. Mr. President, distinguished colleagues, it is valid to state that the National Commission for Refugees was established in 1989 and remains functionally in existence for 27 years. This development makes the present attempt to establish the Commission a cost-free exercise. The Commission is only undergoing changes in name and expanded mandate, which requires a little expansion of the structure to accommodate the IDPs. It is of interest to note that the structuring has already been carried out since the Commission has enough space to accommodate the new department on IDPs with qualified first directors without portfolio to occupy the newly created departments. The legislative proposal does not in any way require new infrastructure or special allocation to operationalize the proposed reform. The current expenditure of the Commission under 2017 Appropriation Act has taken care of the restructuring. The only thing that is necessarily needed is a legal framework that will provide a backing to the present administrative structure of the Commission, which can easily be done without cost implication. It is also of significance to note that the legislative proposal is in conformity with the excellent legislative agenda, which seeks to foster transparency, accountability, and the efficient service delivery through legislative and institutional strengthening. Conclusion, Mr. President, my respected colleagues, permit me to stop at this point to listen to your contribution that will no doubt ensure the speedy passage of this bill into law. Thank you very much.
Well, Mr. Jibrin.
Thank you, Mr. President. I am Barrow Jibrin. I represent Kaduna North in this August Senate. Let me begin by commending the sponsor of this bill for having it in his mind and creating a bill or bringing up a bill to deal with the matters relating to the internally displaced person in this country. We know that of recent we have several, if not thousands, of our citizens who are internally displaced people in this country as a result of conflicts, particularly the Boko Haram crisis. And we have debated severally in this chamber on how agencies that are dealing or working to provide succor to these people are working in an uncoordinated manner. Sometimes you find aids coming into the country from several donor nations, but are not being used properly to help these people. There's no accountability in how these aids are disbursed to these people. It's therefore something to commend or something commendable that there's an attempt through this bill to expand the work of National Commission for Refugees by repealing the law setting up this agency and then enacting another law to create the National Commission for Internally Displaced Persons, Refugees and Migrants in order to deal with this matter appropriately. Mr. President, we need to support this bill so that we do the need in meeting or in creating an avenue where we can have coordination in terms of helping these people so that their life can be brought back to normalcy. I so submit, Mr. President.
All right, thank you. Senator Gbenga Ashafa.
Thank you, Mr. President. Senator Gbenga Ashafa, representing Lagos Senatorial District. I rise to support the sponsor of this bill, as well as the immediate speaker, Senator Jibrin. This is a very, very fair bill, considering the fact that the law already is disposed towards taking care of refugees. It is very important for us to support this bill so that we can accommodate the resettlement of internally displaced persons, which is now a challenge for us in Nigeria. Equally, on the other side, when we look at the global effect of this particular bill, when it is passed into law, it will make it very, very easy for donor agencies and even governments to intervene in the resettlement of IDPs across our nation. It will also serve as a confidence booster, particularly for foreign donors who know that there is a legal backing to their activities. Permit me to mention that sometimes when we are looking for donors from outside the shores of Nigeria to assist us, some of them would like to know whether we have existing laws that will back their activities. And to this effect, I want to support this bill, and I hope it will meet the positive disposition of this revered House. Thank you very much.
Well, dear colleagues, this is a very straightforward bill. I think it's just to expand the mandate of the National Commission for Refugees to include the IDPs, and so that our donors, our friends will know where to go if they want to support us in times of emergency, especially when people are internally displaced. So that's just a summary of this bill and what it seeks to achieve. The society itself is dynamic, so it should be our laws. So as we practice democracy, as we implement our laws, we'll be making necessary changes, to reflect the mood of the moment and then the necessities of the time. So I think that is where this bill comes in. So I would like to thank the sponsor for bringing this up. So distinguished colleagues, having said that, I would like to put the question. Those in support that this bill will raise second time, say aye. Those against, say nay. The ayes have it. Back of Senate.
Mr. President, distinguished senators, the bill for an act to repeal the National Commission for Refugees Act, Cap N21, Laws of the Federation of Nigeria 2004, and enact the National Commission for Internally Displaced Persons, Refugees and Migrants to provide a framework for management, rehabilitation, return, reintegration, and resettlement of victims of displacement, refugee, migration, and for other related matters, 2017, second reading.
Distinguished colleagues, a bill for an act to repeal the National Commission for Refugees Act, Cap N21, Laws of the Federation of Nigeria 2004, and enact the National Commission for Internally Displaced Persons, Refugees and Migrants to provide a framework for management, rehabilitation, return, reintegration, and resettlement of victims of displacement, refugee, migration, and for other related matters, 2017, second reading taken, and referred to the Committee on Special Duties and Interior to report back within 4 weeks. Senate Leader.
Mr. President and my distinguished colleagues, the second order of the day is the second reading of the National Fertilizer Quality Control Bill 2017. Distinguished senators will recall that the bill was read the first time in this chamber on Wednesday, the 23rd day of November 2016. Mr. President, you may wish to invite distinguished Senator Abdullahi Adamu, the Sarkin Yaki of Plateau and Nasarawa and Yobe and his environment, for the bill to be read the second time.
Former Governor Abdullahi Adamu, you have the floor.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. If there is such a party at all. Mr. President, I am Senator Dr. Abdullahi Adamu, and I represent Nasarawa West in the Senate of the Federal Republic. This is a lead debate on a bill for an act to regulate the manufacture, importation, distribution, and quality control of fertilizer in Nigeria and for other related matters, 2017 SB 388. It is my pleasure and duty to present the lead debate. Mr. President, distinguished colleagues, Nigeria has extensive areas of arable land suitable for agriculture, but productivity is low due to nutrient depletion as a result of continuous cropping without or with very little application of fertilizer. Although increasing the use of modern inputs, including fertilizer, is key for raising agricultural productivity and reducing poverty in Nigeria, very little fertilizer is used, making Nigeria one of the lowest users of fertilizer per hectare in the world. This situation, besides limiting crop yields, increases plant nutrition mining, further degradation of the already fragile soils, and challenges of Nigerian farmers' resilience to guarantee food security for the nation in the face of climate change. Starting from the year 2010-2011, with the introduction of the Growth Enhancement Support Scheme, GES, we subsidized fertilizer reaching some 12 to 14 million farmers. Fertilizer use did not only increase, but the number of fertilizer companies and agro-dealers has also increased. Today, approximately 6,000 agro-dealers of various sizes operate in the fertilizer market and serve farmers with a variety of fertilizer products. The unrestricted entry into the fertilizer market without a functioning regulatory framework opens the way for product adulteration, short bag weights, and other malpractices on the part of fertilizer manufacturers, importers, distributors, and retailers to the detriment of the unsuspecting farmer. Indeed, studies have shown that about 15% of fertilizer currently sold in the country are fake or of undesirable quality. The need for a regulatory framework for Nigeria. The need for a regulatory and quality control system, specifically for the fertilizer subsector, was recognized much earlier. For instance, an arrangement was put in place for quality control and supervision of fertilizer shipments under the OEs of the Fertilizer Procurement and Distribution Department of the Federal Ministry of Agriculture and Rural Development, whereby shipment inspection functions were contracted to a private company, Society Generale Surveillance. In addition, the National Fertilizer Coordinating Committee was established in 1983 as a general advisory body in respect to regulatory and quality control matters. The establishment of the FTC followed these, comprising scientists from the research institutes and universities. The National Fertilizer Development Center, NFDC, that serves as a laboratory and implementation unit for the activities of NFTC, was also established. There was no definite legal framework for the series of fertilizer policies in the country. The Fertilizer Board Act, Decree 8 of 1977, was promulgated to establish a National Fertilizer Board entrusted the procurement and distribution of functions. Another legislation came into being in 1992, namely Fertilizer Control Decree 1992, which was aimed at giving powers to the federal government over fixation of quality standards for technical content and packaging materials, quality control, and supervision of FPDD, testing of fertilizer samples, among others. However, both laws have been repealed in June 2016 by the House of Representatives. Many of the agricultural policies, laws, regulations, and administrative practices that the government still carries in its books and implements in practice deter rather than promote expanded private investment in the fertilizer sector. These problems, policies, laws, regulations, and administrative practices can be categorized as missing or ambiguous, economically flawed, excessive, and poor implementation. For example, the government is amending the Fertilizer Act to accommodate changes in the organization and structure of the fertilizer industry, from government procurement and distribution to a competitively market-based and private sector-driven system, and changes in technology and innovation. Nigeria is a signatory to the ECOWAS fertilizer regulation, but needs to democratize, or domesticate rather, it to meet Nigerian circumstances. From the early year 2000, the Economic Committee of West African States, ECOWAS, and the West African Economic and Monetary Union, with technical assistance from the International Fertilizer Development Center, through the MIR plus project developed ECOWAS fertilizer regulation that was signed in Abidjan, Cote d'Ivoire, by the Council of Ministers of Agriculture of member states in December 2012. In the light of this, Nigeria needs to domesticate the ECOWAS regulation to fit its realities and peculiarities and iron out inconsistencies in the two regulations. For example, the current draft fertilizer control bill of Nigeria requires field tests and approval by a committee for all new types of fertilizer and fertilizer formula sold to farmers, which is inconsistent with the ECOWAS regional approach of truth in labeling. Also, there are no statutory regulations that are intra-biased and act of parliament and provide for regulation and enforcement of the quality, quantity, nutrient content, and truth in labeling.
Can you hold that Imo caucus outside, please? Imo caucus. Put down your microphone. Your microphone, please.
Specific regulations backed by an act of parliament that make it illegal to penalize selling underweight fertilizer bags, substandard and adulterated products, even ash and sand. Therefore, fertilizer regulatory agencies lack legal authority to punish offenders. The police and court systems are ineffective to prevent the successful conviction and punishment of violators. This bill has been read the third time and passed by the House of Representatives. It will therefore be most appropriate for the Senate to concur by subsequently passing it into law. The main purpose of the bill is to safeguard the interest of the farmer against nutrient deficiencies, adulteration, misleading claims, and short weights, to safeguard the interests of fertilizer enterprises and contribute to the creation of an enabling environment for investment by the private sector in the fertilizer industry, to protect the Nigerian natural environment and its people against the potential dangers associated with inappropriate fertilizer use, and to facilitate fertilizer trade across the 36 states and the Federal Capital Territory, Abuja, with West African neighbors through the implementation of principles and rules that dismantle barriers to trade. The bill seeks to, among others, provide for a fertilizer regulatory system, including licensing of fertilizer entrepreneurs, inspection, sampling, and analysis, registration requirements, labeling requirements, and inspection fee collection procedures. For offenses and punishments, including plant nutrient deficiencies, misbranding, adulteration, underweight, obstruction of inspectors, stop sale orders, seizure, condemnation, and sale, authenticity of analytical results, and destructive ingredients. For environmental and public health issues relating to the use of fertilizer. B, for plant nutrient guarantees, and for investigational allowances and penalties, and for publication of deficiency reports and annual fertilizer tonnage reports, and finally, for any other matter that may be deemed necessary for the implementation of this bill. Mr. President, distinguished colleagues, the time for action is now. The government ought to create or improve its regulatory capacity by having appropriate personnel that can inspect blending plants, ports and markets, and establish laboratories or collaborate with private laboratories to perform proper chemical analysis. I sincerely thank you, distinguished colleagues, for your attention and urge you to give this bill the urgent attention it deserves by giving it an accelerated passage. The bill will not accrue any financial implication to the federal government, as its activities are already funded in the budgetary allocations of the Federal Ministry of Agriculture and Rural Development. The objective of this bill is to regulate the manufacture, importation, distribution, and quality control of fertilizer in Nigeria. I so submit.
Okay, very well. Senator Sabi.
Thank you, Mr. President, distinguished colleagues. I'm Aliu Sabi Abdullahi, representing Niger North Senatorial District. Mr. President, distinguished colleagues, the bill before us is one that can be described as coming not just at the right time, but one that we contribute tremendously in supporting the economic development effort of government. Indeed, it is very clear that fertilizer in our agricultural system today represents a key determinant of farmers' productivity. And statistics have shown very clearly that our farmers are not using enough fertilizers. And where they are using, they are doing what is called misapplication because they are not even properly guided. Now, if you look at the sum total of all of this, the importance is that given the number of small-scale farmers we have in this country who are operating at the level of our rural areas, providing them the right type of fertilizer remains a very important intervention that any government can make. And so I will say very clearly that this has been a missing link. I was in the Federal Ministry of Agriculture, and I know as far back as 2000, the issue of having a regulatory framework to regulate fertilizer usage in Nigeria has been in the forefront of all our requests. And so I want to submit that passing this particular bill into an act by this 8th Senate and indeed the 8th National Assembly will be a very remarkable intervention in the agricultural legislation of Nigeria. Mr. President, distinguished colleagues, what is worrisome is that there are a lot of sharp practices out there in the field. There are people who just pack all kinds of things, sand, with wrong chemical composition, and sell to our very unsuspecting farmers. And having wasted all their time for the year, expecting to get a bumper harvest based on the fertilizer they have put in, they end up getting nothing in return. So for me, passing this bill will contribute to our food security efforts. I recall vividly we have passed a food security bill, and so this is definitely a very strong intervention also to support the national food security effort. We are talking about diversifying the Nigerian economy. And so if you have to diversify the Nigerian economy, agriculture remains one very vital and fertile area that can do a lot of intervention in terms of diversifying the economy, because you get your raw materials from there that other industries and many other industries, either forward or backward integration, can use. So I think if we look at the impact this bill is going to make, it is very, very tremendous. And I want to second that we, as a Senate, give the accelerated hearing to the passage of this bill as submitted by the lead debate. Mr. President, distinguished colleagues, on this note, I second that this bill be read the second time. Thank you.
Well, distinguished colleagues, you can see we have a very long list of matters for second reading today. So I just want to plead that since this particular bill is just for concurrence, it's already gone through all the legislative processes in the House of Representatives. What we can do at this stage is, if we don't have any objection, we'll go ahead and concur. And if you look at this, the lead debate, it was quite explicit, and I think it's quite well understood. The essence of this bill is to provide a regulatory regime for fertilizer from production to the management chain. And I believe that one of our problems as a country is regulation, and the other is enforcement. Once we have the proper regulatory regime, and then there's enforcement when there's a breach, I'm sure we'll be out of the wood and be on our way into a civilized society. So I think this bill is coming at the right time, and I would like to accept that we've all come to terms with the provisions so that we can make progress. So is it the wish of the Senate now to take the second reading? Those in support say aye. Those against say nay. The ayes have it. Clerk of Senate.
Mr. President, distinguished senators, a bill for an act to regulate the manufacture, importation, distribution, and quality control of fertilizer in Nigeria and for other related matters, 2017, second reading.
Dear colleagues, a bill for an act to regulate the manufacture, importation, distribution, and quality control of fertilizer in Nigeria and for other related matters, 2017, second reading, taken and referred to the Committee on Agriculture and Rural Development to report back within 4 weeks. Mr. Leader.
Mr. President, very distinguished colleagues, the third order of the day is the second reading of the Firearms Act, Cap F28, LFN 2004, Amendment Bill 2017. Distinguished senators will recall that the bill was read the first time in this chamber on Wednesday, 14th June 2017. Mr. President, you may wish to invite Senator Bola and Dada to move the motion for the bill to be read a second time.
Hello, Dada. Senator Dada, you have the floor.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. President. Distinguished colleagues, before I read this bill, I need to call the attention of the nation to the recent happening in our country where a lot of ammunition has been imported in this country illegally. This is what necessitates this bill, and I appreciate if every member can listen to it carefully. A bill for an act to amend the Firearms Act, Cap F28, the law of Federation of Nigeria 204, to provide for the increase in fine and provide for destruction of firearms legally imported into the country or in possession of individuals without valid licenses or further matter connected with. Mr. President, sir, the bill was read for the first time in this House of Chamber on Wednesday, on 14 June 2017. Before I proceed, I need to thank Mr. President and his colleagues for endorsing the request for support this bill. As of today, 47 distinguished colleagues have handed their signature in support of this bill. I sincerely appreciate your good gestures. Distinguished colleagues, the major objective of this bill is amendment as follows: to increase the fine imposed for offenses committed under the Act from 1,000 naira to 100,000 naira. Number 2, to provide for destruction of firearms illegally imported into the country or in possession of individuals without valid licenses in order to build public confidence in overall effort to eradicate illegal firearms and prevent firearms importation and find their way back into society. Item 3, to generate revenue for federal government from recycling and reusing waste materials such as metal, wood, plastic derived from the destroyed firearms. Distinguished colleagues, I need to refresh your memories on the status of illegal firearms by various agencies of government in the past few years. On the 31st January 2017, Nigerians woke up to read a caption in the Daily Trust newspaper with a bold heading: "Custom intercept 661 firearms in Lagos." The publication stated that Nigerian Customs Services seized 621 pump-action guns imported into the country from illegally brought into from China. They were packed in 49 boxes, concealed with a steel dust and other mechanized goods in the 40-foot containers. Mr. President, sir, these colleagues, permit me to ask these simple questions. Where are the firearms? Where are the firearms? Who is keeping the firearms? My suggestion is as good as yours. On the 24th of the same year, on May of this year, an online publication called Bulls Nigeria carried another sensational headline: "Armed container customs seized cargo with 441 pump-action guns
imported through Turkey. This time around is from Turkey, not from China. Distinguished colleagues, permit me to ask the same questions again. Where are the firearms? Who is keeping the firearms? Your guess is as good as mine. Distinguished colleagues, the proliferation of illegal arms into the country is worrisome. On record, the confiscation of illegal arms is not restricted to men or women of Nigerian customs alone. There are reports of seizure of firearms by serious agencies of government, army, the police, civil defense, and host of others. We all remember various firearms seized from repentant Niger Delta militants during the amnesty period. The question is, where are these firearms? Have they not been found their way back to the market again? Mr. President, colleagues, there's another disturbing news on the proliferation of illegal firearms in Nigeria. According to publication in Vanguard newspaper on the 23rd August of last year, it was reported that the United Nations raised alarm over the proliferation of illegal arms in Nigeria. It's very worrisome to the world. It was reported that 500 million of such weapons are circulating in West Africa, with about 250,000 million of them are domiciled in Nigerian environment. These statistics was supplied by the Director of the United Nations Regional Center for Peace and Disarmament in Africa, Mrs. Olatokunbo Ige, at the National Consultation on the Physical Security and Stockpile Management in Abuja, organized by the President Committees on Small Firearms. Distinguished colleagues, as we stand here today, there's a lacuna in the Firearms Act. There is no provision for destruction of illegal firearms once it be intercepted. I'm convinced that some of these arms might find their way back into the market with the negative consequences. Having observed this, the major essence of this paper of amendment is to make provisions for destruction of these illegal firearms. Dear colleagues, in the United States, there are different schools of thought on how to handle illicit firearms. First school of thought is that such arms should be sold by the agency responsible for the seizure and proceeds that are now being linked to federal government accounts. The objection to this school of thought is that some of these arms find their way back into the arms of criminals element in society. A case of Raymond Crisis, reported by the Star Tribune newspaper on the 21st February 2015, was a reference point. The New Hope police station in Minnesota, United States, confiscated several firearms and placed them on auction. Mr. Casey, a mentally deranged and unstable person who was prohibited by law from owning guns because of his mental health, ordered a shotgun from one online auction site and arranged his friend to pick up for him from the gun shop. On the 26th January 2015, Mr. Casey took the gun to a New Hope City and killed two policemen at Point Blank. Mr. President, Mr. Colleagues, the second school of thought is that illicit firearms should be destroyed, which I feel we should support. I belong to this thought. I need to purpose for this amendment. My inquiries reveal that confiscated and illegal firearms are kept in the National Armory in Nigeria. As today, there are statistics of the number of illicit firearms kept in this armory. Furthermore, that today, Nigeria does not have any equipment to destroy these illegal firearms. However, there's a company in Nigeria called Gun Busters, owned by a retired police officer. The company manufactures firearms equipment that are used to destroy equipment systems. The cost is another $100,000 above. To set that each enforcement agency to buy one. Therefore, there is a increase in the number of firearms seized or surrendered to law enforcement agencies. On Monday, 11, 2017,
services, 110,000 still collecting. Fortunately, that there's no house destroyed.